Drive time on this grey, cloudy Saturday morning. Thank you very much for joining us again on this 10th edition of Drive Time. Well, first of all, as I normally do, can just say thank you to our loyal band of listeners. We're small in size, but it's not the size, it's the quality of people who are watching. Trust me, outstanding support that we receive from this channel, where people are making solid contributions to the debate, and we're delighted to have you with us. Let us know you're watching, say hi, and as usual every week I do ask you to share the program with your friends and family and your networks, just to let them know that we are live on Lee Jasper Drive Time. As I said, it's been 10 weeks throughout lockdown that we've been bringing you what I hope is quality food for thought, quality guests. I've been so impressed with the guests that have been on the program, their professionalism, their commitment to our community. It's been all there for you to see, and we're delighted that all of those contributors have made the effort to be with us and grace the platform with their professionalism and their commitment and wisdom. So do share, do say hi this morning. Let me see who's online as we watch. And Donna Murray Turner is first out the gate, saying good morning, Uncle Lee. Now, I'm called Uncle Lee because that's my weight in the community. I'm now 62. Yeah, that's right, 62. Father of 9, grandfather to 8, great-grandfather to 3. And I'm particularly delighted this morning because yesterday, and I haven't shared this previously, but yesterday we had the wonderful news that my daughter, who had been diagnosed with breast cancer in December of last year, and who's been in lockdown ever since, as we've supported her getting chemotherapy, was given the all clear after having breast surgery last week. She's now free of cancer. So you can tell that I'm slightly drunk on the optimism, the good news, and the delirium of that. So yes, do share with your friends and networks that we are on live this morning. What are we talking about? Well, today is just a tea and talk. I got my tea. I suggest you get yours. Mint tea, grown from my own garden, by the way. And we're going to be joined by the team that make the Jasper's Drive Time #Home Edition work. The flyers, the guests, the camera, the studio people, everybody that really needs to be thanked for being part of the Lee Jasper Drive Time team, which is a huge platform for Black Socks, the social movement. And they are my sponsors. And I'm saluting them. I'm saluting myself because I'm my co-founder of Black Socks, a do-for-self movement, whose information you will see scrolling across the screen as we go through this program. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to have a chat about the programs that have already been on. We're going to have a chat about what maybe you'd like to see in the future. We're going to have reflections from our team and guests that will contribute to the discussion this morning. And thank you, Antigua Nelson, for your warm words in relation to my daughter. Yes, we are delighted, and we give the Almighty all of the praise every day, every single day. So we'll be joined by the team who's going to take us through a discussion, but do share with your friends. We need to drum up an audience for such an esteemed panel. And this weekend, just a word to the wise. Look, as well as dealing what we're going to deal with in terms of the wipe up, the big wipe up for Lee Jasper Drive Time and where we are now, where we're going in the future, just want to send out a public health message. And that is in relation to our young people. As we've seen far too many murders on the streets this weekend, and I'm appealing to everybody of my age group and everybody who has influence in our communities to get on the phone, to talk to young people, to pull them back from the brink of violence, and to say let's have peace on the streets. I do know that the Metropolitan Police Service will be deployed in full force this weekend. That's Armed Police, TSG, Territorial Support Group officers, as well as the full complement of Met officers. And that means that lots of police officers are on the streets, and they will be engaged in stopping and searching. Now, we know sometimes they get it right, and we know sometimes they get it wrong. So it's a difficult weekend, or could be a difficult weekend this weekend. And given that the police are in full deployment, I think it's duty bound on all of us to say to our young people, just let's cool it this weekend and let's get through it peacefully, and let us not return to the mass bloodshed that was so prevalent before lockdown kicked in. And so we appeal to you to share that. If you look on my Facebook page and you look on, look on the Facebook page, or you're on WhatsApp, you can find me and you'll see I posted that message. Again, I'd be delighted if you would share that, just so that we can hopefully avoid what could be potentially a toxic mix of lots of police officers, lots of sunshine, can't see the sun coming out now, and lots of young people on the street, particularly later on. If there's any block parties, we're going to have to be particularly vigilant. So keep saying hello this morning and stay with us as we introduce our guests. We're going to have a romp through the program as usual. Lee Jasper's Drive Time is like a time bubble. No sooner as you start watching and the program's finished, and you wonder where 2 hours went so quickly. But we're glad that you are with us. So let me introduce our guests. First amongst our guests is Mr. Viv Harmoon. Viv, you don't know, he's an entrepreneur, a futurologist, an investor, a strategist, and we've known each other for donkey's years, but we've actually worked together more intensively over the last 20 years. Over the last 12, let's say, years, that partnership has become incredibly productive. And I'm delighted he's on the program. He's a co-founder of Black Sox along with myself and Patricia Lamore and many others. But Viv, welcome to the Drive.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good morning. I am focused, reflective. I think the point you made about the duty of care to our young people is a really important one, as the lockdown tightens and then relaxes and then tightens again. Yeah, so and I'm looking forward to the big wipe up as well. I think it's been a very, very successful series. I don't. Yeah, I mean,
okay. Let's bring on the other guest. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to you. Yeah. Okay. Also on the program is Gabriel Asante. He's a designer of par excellence. He's somebody that pulls together them super sexy graphics and posters that you see with us, and he's a fabulously talented designer who's got his mic on mute, so we won't be able to hear him when he speaks unless he takes it off mute out there in Manchester. Gabriel, good morning. Welcome to Lee Jasper's Time.
Good morning. I'm very, very appreciative of this time to also have my voice heard, and I guess it's got to put a face to I guess the design that you guys see out there. I would like to say it is a work in progress, so every day I'm learning, and I would try to leave room for improvements. So thank you for giving me the platform, Lee.
Wow. Oh, he's so humble, isn't he? It's
I'm not media trained.
Well, we're delighted to have you, and if you haven't reached your full potential yet, we are excited to see what happens when you do. Our next contributor today to part of the Jasper Drive Time team is our other designer, because you always have to have two. That's the lesson. And his name is Gel. His name is not Gel, it's Jay. Jay Nelson.
How you doing, guys?
Escapism 360 hashtag with his fully designed backdrop, everything ready to.
How you doing, guys? How you doing?
Yeah, we're good, Jay. How are you today?
Yeah, best today. Feeling best today. We're here. So we have to give
For
thanks.
those who don't know, between Jay and Gabrielle, these are our two designers par excellence. So Mr. Vivamoon works behind the scenes. Not only is he part of the Black Sox team, but he makes sure that all the guests that we have on the show are contacted, spoken to, lined up, and ready to roll. And we also have Theo. Now, Theo is from MediaNet, and he runs the studio. Is he coming on screen today, or is he
hiding?
Guy,
He's hiding.
You
think he's some kind of exclusive dude? You know, we should have put a black box up to represent him.
Yeah, empty chair. Well, you know, he's not. He's refusing to come on. But let me tell you,
all right, but we're gonna expose him out on the road one of these days.
Oh, look, there he goes. He's put the logo.
You've overcropped the logo, sir.
Time to show you.
Without Theo at the studio working his magic at MediaNet, one of our partners for Lee Jasper Drive Time, we couldn't do the show, and we couldn't do the show as professionally as has been done. And we salute Theo, and he's part of the team also. Also, Ian Diaz, who's a young Spanish cameraman. He's not able to be with us today, but Ian Diaz is you've seen the Drive Times before we started doing home editions, right? The in-depth documentary pieces, beautifully shot like they're in Hollywood. Well, that's the man that shoots those videos. And Ian Diaz is as much part of the team as everybody here today, and we salute him. His wife is pregnant. We're about to give birth, or very near close to that, I think in the last 4 weeks. And so we wish him and her our very best, and we're delighted to have him on the team. And also, should we shout, well, I can't shout out the rest because they do help us out, but they don't want to be named. But those who do not wish to be named, because you wish to work in silent contributor, we thank you also. Because we've had key advice from people in the industry who've been very supportive in helping us get the program right. So we are more than happy to have our fifth columnists who work on the plantation, and for their own safety, we've decided not to name them and to keep them safe. But we know who you are, and we salute you also. So guys,
Shadow members, please.
Shadow
members.
Shadow army, absolutely. See, sometimes we have to work above the radar, and sometimes you have to work below the radar. And it's about how you intelligently use all of the assets in a community that keeps everybody safe. So we're delighted to thank them also. So guys, Viv, we've had 10 weeks, 10 solid weeks of programs that have, well, ranged from, you tell us, I can't even remember this morning who we had, when we had them, what's been going on.
So, I mean, the other, just to tighten off on your last point, Lee, the other shout out would be to HMP TV, which is part of the broader. Now, I think you were correct in terms of the project management piece, but as part of the broader Black Sox effort around communication and getting the healthy propaganda out there, HMP TV is the other arm of the videography and media platform dual master team. That is HMP TV and MediaNet. And although HMP TV is not part of this specific project, they are intimately involved in a number of the projects that we will be rolling out going forwards, and maybe we'll touch on some of those, Lee, as we move forward. So I just wanted to shout out on HMP TV. I know that Robert Robinson is busy in his cave working on his platform. He's got so many shows out there. He gave us a few tasters during lockdown, an absolutely exceptional effort on his part in terms of pulling all of that together over the last 2 years. In terms of the shows, we've had mental health and segregated shows. So we had one specifically to do with men, one to specifically cover the issues with women, and that was during Mental Health Week on the 16th, and at the end of Mental Health Week. Were very powerful, which I'm sure we'll get into. Domestic abuse, and there's a piece of legislation going through the House at the moment that we're going to want to make sure that we highlight as it comes to its final reading and it passes into law. We did one on schools, which again is very current. What we're doing with our young people during the summer period and how we prepare them for going back to some kind of school environment in September. The rise of the Black millennial women, that was powerful. Oh, we'll get into that. Show Me the Money, by far my favorite show, I have to say. Show Me the Money. Black music, street culture, that Jane played a particular part in pulling together. Real Talk, and which allowed us to bring in some of the white leaders, not just the white male leaders and influencers in the public sector. And we're definitely looking to do more about with that kind of theme. Got a lot of positive feedback. 21st Century Black Creatives, which was last week, and then it brings us right up to today, which is the big wipe up.
The big wipe up.
Big wipe up.
So,
yeah.
So you've got a broad range of programs, and I've been delighted to do any one, and some that stick out for me. Certainly the mental health one, both for Black men and women. That was a powerful couple of shows in which people went deep into their own personal experience of mental health issues, and was particularly, I think, insightful in people showing their own struggles with depression, with ill health, and how they develop tactics to improve their own mental health resilience and first aid. Those two shows stuck out for me. But also domestic violence. I just love, and when we do the next series next time round, we're going to have domestic violence on every single series I'll ever do. I make no apologies for that, because I am deeply committed to, as are we all, to providing a platform, both for men who oppose domestic violence. And we did have men, particularly young David, who did great work around Black men and domestic violence. And I found that one also compelling. And Show Me the Money. Well, when you have a procurement officer who's a Black man, who's responsible for £1 billion worth of public sector procurement, I mean, who's not going to get excited about that? I mean, all of them really were superb. And of course, Viv, you were on a number of them. What gives your recollections on?
Well, I can go back to the Black men mental health one. That was really an important show for us, because we still are not represented within the health service across the board, but particularly in relation to mental health, even though we're constantly referred to as being disproportionately represented at the more acute end of the service, where people are being sectioned and heavily medicated. We access healthcare through the criminal justice system, and often, as you mentioned earlier, it's on the back of police harassment. A young man, maybe he's just had it, he blows his mind there, and all of a sudden he's labelled as someone who's got a mental health problem. He's pulled into the criminal justice system and then ends up at the acute end of service provision, which actually doesn't help them. It controls them. Heavy medication is a very effective means of controlling them and really killing that and dumbing down their personality, but it doesn't really help them. I think it was an opportunity for us to talk about OMAR, Open Minds Alliance, which is coming along very nicely. People can find out about any of the topics and the speakers on the shows through info@blacksocks.com, which I'm sure Thea will run across the bottom of the screen. We had a lot of individuals on the show also sharing their personal experiences. Jay was on there and covered his own personal experiences around mental health, which is ongoing for him. I don't think we've ever been in a time where we can actually talk about our own, as black men, our own vulnerabilities without fear of it undermining us as professionals, as effective leaders in our community and in our homes. You know, and in fact, a time where you can disclose your own personal stuff and be praised for it. So, you know, massive praise and respect to Jay for stepping out, because he's in an industry, a sector that's still very, very much about how long your phallus and thick your phallus is.
Very much so.
This is a family show on Saturday morning.
All right, Lee, I knew you'd pick up on that one, but we won't explore why you felt the need to interject there. And then Great, who's a young man, 19 years of age, has been diagnosed with clinical depression in the past, highly, highly talented, hadn't, deal with all the struggles, have been labeled as, a black man with mental health issues, very dark, and there's a big guy. So, being dismissed as someone who's not particularly bright, even though when people explore these issues with him, they find out he's actually a talented young man who got himself into Oxford University and all the rest. So he talked very, very, very eloquently and with passion about his own experiences. It was powerful. It was just a powerful show. I mean, I don't know, Jay, what your thoughts are around that.
It was a great, I think the fact of the platform, like, we need more platforms where we can have open talks like this, where we feel safe to actually speak about stuff that's going on in our lives. And yeah, for me, that was a great entry into that kind of world in terms of kind of speaking publicly about what was going on. It felt like a weight off my shoulder in terms of doing it. And I think it's something that is definitely needed for, we need to do a lot more. Because like Viv said, definitely in scenes like mine, which are very much based on bravado and very much based on how you look, and it's so challenging to kind of discuss certain things that affect you in that kind of way within that thing, and it be the fact of people coming out and saying what they're saying is we need more platforms like that for us to be able to do it. So Lee, great stuff, Viv, great stuff on that, because we definitely do need more places like this. I've got a lot of feedback from it as well, and so it's a great show.
Tell us a bit about the campaign you've got running for Omar.
So
that you're in the process of signing off on.
So basically Omar, Open Minds Alliance, basically is something that is in support of mental health and work with people within mental health. We've got some great guys on the actual board of it, and it's basically my part is through people like myself, where there's just be normal 9-to-5ers where they are creative, where they in certain sectors or fields. It's basically showing, this mental health thing is there, but we still can progress professionally. Like Viv said, one of the biggest challenges is, opening up, but still not being judged on your professionality or what you do in your 9-to-5 or in your day-to-day life. So Omar is one initiative that we're putting forward to kind of, to support people in those situations and to move forward.
Sounds great.
Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. Sorry, Lee. You got the campaign that you are developing. You've done the first piece. Great.
Which is the Trust Me campaign. So basically, what we're trying to do is take a lot of people from different walks of life, and basically, push this campaign, which is the Trust Me campaign. So we have the Great on there. We have a few other people coming through in it. You'll see a lot more. We're going to try to, obviously, with the social media, Instagram, Twitter, so forth. We're going to be pushing the Omar initiative. I am a little bit flustered at the moment still, but but basically Omar is going to be a great initiative, and you'll see a lot more coming soon.
Let me help you along. See, I put you on the spot. Okay.
We'd love to do. Oh, go on. Let's go on.
Yeah. So Omar is a network of organizations and individuals. It's like Black Sox, but Black Sox doesn't actually deliver services. It facilitates partnerships and enables and ensures that the stuff that we need gets done. But Omar is a network that will push for specific things that we require in our community to happen. And it starts by making sure that we're around the negotiating table when all that money, those billions that are swimming around in the NHS, gets chopped up. At the moment, or up until very recently, we had no black communities around the table. What would happen is we'd get a little bit of money at the end after everybody's chopped their bit to maybe deliver a short-term service on the high street, right, at an operational level. And usually, no matter how good that service was, the funds would still be cut after a year, and if it was lucky, 2 years. So we want to stop that trend. The second thing that Omar seeks to do is address this data poverty. They've researched us to death, and we still don't really have an understanding of what the issues are around mental ill health in our community, to what extent it is a problem, and not really to do with institutionalized and systemic racism. You know, they keep telling us it's our issue, but really my argument would be it's not our issue. This is what's happening to us as a consequence of what you're doing to us. So we want to unpick and expose the levels of gaslighting that are going on, whilst they, perpetuate this campaign, this institutionalized campaign against our young people, even before they've stepped out of the womb. And then the last pillar is the capacity building side, because as Lee's already stated, Black Sox is all about doing for self. So Omar is about providing the training, the tools necessary for us to do what needs to be done in our communities, for us, by us. And so unlock some of the millions that are going into organizations like Mind, who run around publicly telling people they're best placed to meet the Black community's needs. They know better than the Black community what the Black community wants. Outrageous, horrendous. We're going to put a stop to it. Trust Me, as a banner or a statement or a key theme for Omar, basically argues that we must trust our young people when they have mental health issues and guide them through that. We must trust. The young people have to be able to trust their parents and other members of their family when they're going through these issues. We have to work with the institutions and get them into a place where we can trust them. And we must also get them into a place where they understand that we're best placed to meet our own needs. They can be on board in supporting us, but they need to trust us to be able to get that done. Then you've got the few Black professionals within those institutions, Lee referred to it as the plantation, rightly so, who are not trusted by the individuals who have hired them. So there's a whole other internal workforce professionalism issue that needs to be addressed as well. So Jay came with the campaign idea. So it's a whole series of posters as well as audio visual stuff talking about the issue of trust and how that will roll out. And he's a number of interviews have been done already with I can't even think of any at the moment, but aside from Jay, who did we do? Sandra Kerr, very important individual within the business enterprise sector. In fact, business in the community was set up on the back of the riots in the early 80s. Lee being the expert on that whole issue, probably touch on all of that, and many others. So I won't say any more about it. But info@blacksox.com if you want to be involved and you want to find out more about that initiative. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, great work, Jay. So, Gabrielle, your design challenge has been a weekly challenge to get them out. I know that sometimes it's involved the late night oil burning and the frantic phone calls from Uncle Viv. The two of you would have felt that. But have you watched any of these shows? Have you been involved in any way? Has anything struck you? How's the challenge been for you on the design side?
Well, I caught the domestic violence bit for a couple of minutes and had to move on to other things. But being honest, I haven't really kept up with it. But I have been so much in the process, I haven't even had a chance to really look at the end result. So, and obviously, right now I'm feeling a bit gutted. I feel like I should have paid attention a little bit more. That's how things go sometimes. My life is pretty fast moving at the moment, so it's trying to find a balance between the delivering for this and also delivering for other things. And I think at this point it's more of prioritizing what really matters. And drive time obviously became that thing that I prioritize in my life. And it's been a great journey. To be fair, it's challenged me in lots of ways. It's given me an opportunity to be thought more about the whole process. Obviously, Viv has been keeping up with me and being me into shape, and obviously putting me on the right path in most cases. But yeah, I think it's a great platform. I think whoever subscribed to it definitely did a big favor to themselves, and I want something like this to continue for our community. We need a platform where people can always share their views and not feel sort of boxed in after doing that. So yeah, it's been a great process for me. I can't really complain much about it. I have no complaints at all. I'm quite privileged to be in the whole process. So.
And tell us, because obviously, you're working for yourself, you're self-employed, you're a in-demand designer. What motivates you to give of your time and to get involved in this way? What is I know it can't be Uncle Viv, because that wouldn't work by itself. Why?
Well, in any industry that I involve myself in, I'm a black man first. That's one thing that I need to understand, and that's one thing that I understood from the jump, being in a corporate environment, is that whatever you do, you're going to be a black man first. Put black priorities first. So obviously, I'm a designer. I'm in the creative field. I ask myself, what can I do to contribute to the whole process? And that's what drives me. These are the kind of things some creative minds might stay away from because it's maybe a little too political. It's maybe a little too, controversial for the industry, but that's not what I deal with anyway. I need something that will break the mold. And to be fair, to be controlled by that mindset is just not me at all. So whenever I get a chance to jump on something like this, it's passion first, and then we work out the kinks later on. But yeah, I'm a black man first. Black issues will always be my priority, and in any way I can contribute to it, obviously in this case will be design, will be my time, my resources. It will always be given 100%. And it's been a good journey for me. Obviously, I had to be shaped into that kind of person. I've had some really good people to help me do that. You, for instance, Mr. Lee, you've given me the opportunity, and Mr. Viv, being the self, like I guess the father figure or the uncle figure that will pull you up and say, no, don't do that. You don't understand what you're doing. Let me put you on game here and there. So yeah, it's passion first. I have great passion for always being in a conversation about Black issues. And there is a lot of them that needs to be put in the forefront. And it's a good place to be, part of the conversation or in the process.
But it's I think it's so refreshing to hear from young Black professionals who have that ethical perspective to their work. And obviously the issue of working in the corporate sector and on the plantation, as we call it, can have its own challenges. But one of the ways I think to give Black professionals balance is to give something back. And I think we're all in the position now of being able to give something back. Jay, you're equally in demand as a designer and so on. What kind of motivates you to put something back in your community?
Well, just like Gabriel said, to be fair, especially in these times right now, one of the things that I definitely said I wanted to do is I wanted to be more community based. I wanted to do more stuff that that gave us the knowledge and the tools to move forward together rather than individually. I think this is definitely the time where we have to kind of change our ethos in terms of how we work together and what we do. So I wanted to lend my skills to that type of platform. I've kind of been in an industry that is very much, if I say clubland entertainment, it's been very much based on who can do what and who can do it the best, which it's great with that kind of, should we say, professional kind of competition. But after a while, you realize that you get further working together. So for me, I said moving forward, especially within this time, anything that we do has to be lent towards the community and to the betterment of ourselves. So so that's what motivates me right now. And to be fair, I've lent myself to a few projects that is in that kind of vein. So yeah, so that's where I lay at the moment.
Well, you know, and I say to the people who are watching, listen, if you've got graphic design needs, I want you to use these guys because they're investing in our community. And we need to build those ethical ecosystems of people who are creating the black economy and also have a passion for their community. And we're delighted to hear from these two young men who are at the top of their trade. Trust me, you will never be disappointed in what they produce in terms of the quality and commitment to professionalism and design. Refreshing to hear on a Saturday morning, Viv.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think one of the things I'm conscious of, I think the only right to raise it is that it's an all-male team, and it's not deliberate. It's based on the skills and availability. When we decided to, or Lee decided to repurpose drive time in response, drive time at home or drive time home edition in response to the whole COVID-19 crisis, which is ongoing. I mean, we're not quite sure where it's going if you're listening to Boris, but we know it's still here in some way, shape or form. And then last, I mean, the follow-up mental health program focused on the women's issues, and so it was segregated, and it wasn't because we were continuing this whole kind of male-female thing, but we knew that women have got specific issues around the whole mental health piece, and they, you know, it was right that they had the space to air that amongst themselves. And Lee very generously gave the slot over to Karen Allen to co-host, and effectively she hosted that show and did an exceptional job. So yeah, Lee, I think it's great that, you know, we've got such talent, and they really are the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Black Sox's reach, contributing in the way that they are and setting an example for other young people. But equally, you know, I've had a lot of women, giving the space over to a lot of women to discuss their stuff without, you know, alpha males interjecting and, you know, saying, you know, well, me too. You know, I've experienced domestic abuse too, and like, you know, we're the ones experiencing mental health. It was just a really powerful show, and I was, you know, it was humbling for me to sit back and watch it, and watch, you know, the, you know, unbelievable talent that is Karen Allen, you know, knock that particular ball out of the park. I mean, people were feeding back on that show for days, if not weeks afterwards.
One of the characteristics of the drive time is the afterburn. You heard about Omar and the Trust Me campaign. Karen Allen, you may not have seen it, but that was the first time she did host anything like this, and I had to just sit back in awe and amazement at what a talent she was and how she hadn't been undiscovered. If there are people out there in media and you're looking for somebody who can present, I'm telling you, Karen Allen is your the woman to go to. She's an undiscovered talent. Well, she's not undiscovered, actually. We knew about it all the time, which is why we bring her onto the platform. But it was a delight to have that show with her. And I think also one of the key experience that left me was our guests on the domestic violence show, and particularly Alison, who came in from Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., I think she's moved to now. And she spoke about her experience of domestic violence, and had us all simply entranced with her deep emotional intelligence and her, you know, for somebody who had suffered so grievously, and we all know that trauma can leave you bent and twisted, negative in many respects, particularly for unresolved trauma. And here's somebody that had been through some unbelievable trauma, not only, grievous sexual abuse, but violence as well. On more than one occasion, disbelieved by her own mother, and yet was able to rise above that like a glorious phoenix. It was transformative in watching. And she was offering herself as a point of contact for anybody in the UK or anywhere else who's going through the same thing. And her generosity of spirit and her candor and openness, I think, was a highlight of the program for me. So we salute Alison over there, our sister in the United Show. Powerful stuff on her behalf.
Yeah, and who did we have on there? I mean, and there's so many powerful guests you had on that show. David Mullins, who's doing a hell of a lot of work with men who are, driving these domestically dysfunctional dynamics and not willing to acknowledge that's what they're doing. He's doing a lot of work with those kinds of men, and that's more work that needs to be done. It's a real gap in our community in terms of addressing those issues. You had Dr. Diane Riney, who's got this swim initiative, but she also does a lot of work with young people, children who have, suffered the fallout from being around these toxic relationships, particularly in lockdown. Her workload and the workload of her associates went up by about 500% during lockdown, which just gives us an indication of the kind of madness that, one, has been taking place behind closed doors, and two, we'll now begin to see spilling out on our streets as these hungry young men and women go out looking for somewhere to place their rage. I think the last individual, everybody was so talented. There's probably Nana, who does her work around these topics internationally in Africa as well as in the UK, across the African continent, or many of the 55 countries, and put a lot of emphasis on training men, husbands, and so on and so forth to understand, the inherent disparities and discrimination that's perpetuated against Black women in every aspect, every facet of their lives. So it's just really powerful stuff. And the other thing I think is important to say about the Drive Time initiatives, Lee, is that it's usually these themes are on the back of stuff that's going on. David Mullins and Courtney Brown from Father to Father have established a kind of a governing body for the work that's taking place with Black men going forward. So I think that's a really powerful thing. It's shortly to be launched. So yeah, it was. I mean, just Jay, just a question, Jay. Sorry, Lee. Does any of this stuff actually get discussed in Bravado land?
Yeah, I mean, we did a great show on Set the Trend, which was our season finale with yourself, Viv, and Courtney, and a host of other guests, because obviously there's a lot of topics for us to unpack and get through, and sometimes the choice of platforms are very specific, so the fact of having a platform like Drive Time, or even the platform that I'm involved with, like I said, Set the Trend or No Bravado, these platforms are there to kind of, allow us to talk about the situations that are quite specific in certain cases, quite challenging, but are happening within our community, with our people, with people that we, that we go to work with, that we rave with, that we, that we chill with. So, these do get discussed, and hopefully when Drive Time comes back, we get more discussions and more topics, because it's definitely needed.
We certainly will. I think one of the ethical considerations that we do when we put together Drive Time is not just simply to discuss issues. We've always said it's news you can use. There's always a back-end project to the issues that we raise, signposting you to organisations and individuals that can assist and help, not just a sort of paralysis of analysis in relation to these matters. And that's part of our ethical response on providing you not just with a platform in relation to these news matters, but also to give you the opportunity to get the help, get the support, get the wisdom and guidance that you need, whether you want to provide these services yourselves or whether you want to access them. That's the ethics that we bring successfully to the program. But over the last weeks and months, of course, we'd be remiss not to talk about the death of George Floyd in Minnesota, America. And we've seen, haven't we, the sort of global response of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, Gabrielle, what's been your perception and response to what you've seen playing out, both in terms of the George Floyd video? I don't know whether you watched it. I found it incredibly difficult to watch, and I don't think I've watched the full 8 minutes 46 seconds yet, and I'm not sure that I will. But what's been your response to both that incident and indeed the explosion of activity by Black Lives Matter movement across the world?
Well, I don't think it's something new to see, what happened with George. Obviously, it's not new to us. We've always seen this play out on the screens, on the newspapers, in the articles, etc., etc. But I feel like this time it's a little different. You have you had an immediate reaction, especially from the young people, and I feel like that should not be brushed under the rug, because I feel like they're in the driving seat in this predicament. As a Black man, it was good to see that at least we have an initial reaction that makes sense to these things, because obviously we've been seeing this happen over and over again. At some point, you just get numb to it. Here goes another Black man being killed with impunity. But I really do appreciate the reaction. I appreciate the young people out there, on the front lines fighting. Of course, we've got our elders guiding us through this too. But it's unfortunate that it takes something like that for us to realize that we need to fight. It's a fight that's being fought for a long time, still being fought. And personally, I feel like for once, this is the right reaction to it. And now, of course, I don't know where this is going to go, but at least we're fighting. At least we're standing up. At least we're saying this is enough. We're tired of seeing these stories play on. I mean, I do have a young Black kid. How do I explain this to her? Do I tell her to be comfortable with this on the news, or do I give her a certain world where she can stand up for herself when things like this happen? And as a Black man in general, you just feel completely broken when you see things like this. So it was a great chance. It was kind of therapeutic for me to be involved with this whole drive time initiative, having to be able to channel my creativity in a way where it helps me. But not a lot of Black men will have this opportunity, So that's where the mental health stuff comes in there. I feel like we have a lot of discussion to have on that end, not just Black men, just Black people in general. That there should be a space where we can discuss these things. But I feel like we should stand up more for ourselves. We don't need a certain scenario like this to happen for us to realize, boom, let's fight. It has to be everything we do every second, because it is our kids that are going to go through this. Even if we find a way to cope with it, they'll have to also find a way to cope with it. And you don't want to live in a world where you're always finding coping mechanisms. You want to stop the problem right there. And my condolences to obviously George's family and anyone that's been through this kind of scenarios. But I feel like this is the right time, and it's going to be a good fight. And I feel like we've got everyone on our sides. From all the world, you can see there's some sort of union going on. Everyone's got an opinion about this, and I'm glad to see these things happen. I'm more interested in tangibles. I'm more interested to see something that we can hold, feel, to stop these things happening. And my only scare as a Black man is that this isn't as symbolic. process. You know, I feel like at the end of this is something that we need to be able to hold and grasp on and say, this is going to stop scenarios like this from happening to our kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. So it's been an eye-opener for me as a Black man and as a human being, period. So I'll end that there. Thank you.
Well, is it trauma trigger or is it transformation, Viv? I don't know if you, any of you saw the program on ITV, I think last night or the night before, I'm not quite sure, but it did a massive poll survey on whether people think things had moved on for the Black Lives Matter movement. And there was a huge difference between those above 30 and those below 30. Those below 30 thought that this would make a substantive change, and those above 30, and it got higher in percentages as you got older, felt that they were deeply cynical whether this would lead to any real substantive change. And we see the energy of young people all the time into various movements, be that the ecological movement or other movements in the past. So I'm interested in your view, Viv. Is it traumatic trigger or is it transformational change?
Wow. Thank you, Gabriel. It's just such a difficult subject. Gabriel, look, you made a key point there. You said, are we trying to teach our children and everybody else how to cope? Or are we talking about transformation? We're talking about moving beyond coping into a situation where there's something approaching true equity. And I'm going to use that, by the way, going forward. So I'm just letting you know in advance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The researcher in me says, do we need to look at the question before we even attempt to answer it? And the question talks about change. Is it change? Has change really happened? Is it not? Is it whatever? Well, I think there is definitely change. There is definitely change. Some change that we see, this change that we've seen before. So issues around, the renaming of streets and statues and stuff. We've seen that over and over. Leon, you and I will have seen this over and over and over again. These cosmetic changes do not address the fundamental issues that are structural and systemic. Doesn't, not in the slightest. But it is important symbolically if those other things are taking place as well. I think the other big point for me is in relation to, in terms of symbolic stuff, the push, the rush by corporate organizations and statutory organizations to fill their boards with black faces. I've referred to them as black cladding in the past. It's a very powerful reference to what happened at Grenfell. And again, Lee, you and I were intimately involved in the immediate fallout from that tragedy in terms of supporting our communities and trying to make some sense of that crime that was committed and how we can prevent it happening again. So using black people to provide protection, but it's superficial. It's not flame resistant. Ultimately, it doesn't deal with the fundamental issues, but it creates the right kind of cosmetic look. And I've turned down a lot of work, as Lee, I have both had to hand wring over the work that we will take and not take during this period, because many corporates just want to get diversity and inclusion type contracts out the door to be able to say that they've done something. And getting individuals like you and I on board is a particularly big tick, because it makes it much more difficult for other people to be critical of the work that they've been done. But others of our colleagues have been, very, very happy with the volume of work they've been able to pick up with all kinds of really despicable brands. Red Bull has been in the press recently. I know that they're doing bits and pieces of cosmetic work here or there, but their track record around race equality is horrendous, and they're not interested in doing anything significant about it anytime soon. Their $26 billion rich owner, who also happens to be Austrian, has no interest in bringing about change in his company. He's a big supporter of Donald Trump and those other dysfunctionals. So what am I saying? I'm saying on the surface, there's lots of change. There's lots of change. In terms of the structural and institutional stuff, there is no change whatsoever. And I really, really want us to accept that unpalatable truth, because if we don't, we can't do anything about it. And then the last point I'd want to make, these are strategic points, but I want to get into the bits and pieces of, optics and stuff. I'll leave that to, the TV pundits who have made race their business and their industry. But the other big bit for me is to do with the fact that everybody seems to, this is amongst us in our community, that it's a window of opportunity, and if we don't grab it, we're going to miss it. No, it's not. It's not. This is a longitudinal issue. We've got to be strategic about how we address it. The reality is that because institutionally there's no change, it means that there will be other George Floyds. There will be, sadly, both within the UK and abroad. We have to use this as an opportunity to come together, to mobilize, and determine how we address this long-term issue. Green shoots, yes. Profound change at this precise point in time, no. If we think about it as a window, we actually inadvertently play into the hands of the corporates that just want to throw money at it, take the attention away from these fundamentals, throw some money at it, some charity organizations that are impoverished, and bringing some D&I experts to run some listening sessions with their staff, bringing some therapists, job done, box ticked, put their statement out, let's move on. No.
Okay, well, interesting. Jay, is it real change or is it cosmetic? What's your view?
I think it's definitely cosmetic. But what I want to ask you is where do we start? How do we affect real change? What is the actual the stuff that the community can get actually involved in that actually starts to affect that real change?
Well, we've all been talking about it. Black Socks is an example of that. You've got Black Men for Change. It's got nearly 60 Black men, influencers across all sectors working together. It's just pulled down £350,000 from the state to do ethical leadership programs in 4 boroughs. Information can be gotten from info at blacksocks.com. People like Jake Ferguson, who was on Real Talk, he's been the pioneer behind that initiative. And it is really about us as Black influencers in our own right coming together as Black men and doing the work internally that gives us the resilience to be able to do this long-term piece of work globally. Lee can touch on the international stuff that we're doing, but it's not immediate. And too often we look for the immediate wins and it results in us not really getting any sustainable wins for ourselves, our children who are alive now, and those who have not even yet been born.
Well, I think that in response to your question, Jay, I think, look, real change comes about through 3 key pillars, law, politics, and economy. Yeah. And I think on the political level, people have got to sign up to vote like their life depending on it, because it really does. And the only currency that politicians understand is mass block voting. That's the power they will respect. That's the voice they will listen to. When I was a strategic political advisor and I was working at the top level in City Hall, I can tell you, when the political advisors, and there were about 10 of us, would sit around that table, the first thing that was a priority was the biggest political blocks in the city. They were getting the attention. Yeah. Now, I was there for the Afro-Caribbean community, and although we weren't the biggest political bloc, because I was there, I was able to put that priority onto the table and into the priority list. But if we don't organize ourselves in that sense politically, then you never have the political traction when it comes to deciding what the political priorities for action are. So it's literally the currency of politics is politicians' fear that you may vote against them, or politicians' desire that they want you to vote for them. That's very important. Economy, what we've been talking here about in terms of the Black economy. We've got to focus more on building our Black businesses. so that we can fund the things, both in terms of the political world of campaigning, but also in terms of charitable works, in terms of schools, in terms of welfare support for the most disadvantaged. This is what a mature community does. These are not hidden secrets. They're not things that are not readily understandable. Marcus Garvey spoke about all of these. So did Martin Luther. Everybody across the planet who knows anything about our history knows that law, having barristers to prosecute and protect your rights in the court, having politics, mass politics that can drive forward change, and the economy to be self-sufficient, to have self-respect are the key issues that we need to be focused on for the next generation in order to be successful. Because you can always respond to events. I spent the best part of 40 years responding to events. A death at this police station, the exclusion of that child, terrible treatment of this particular employee by that particular employer, so on and so forth, ad infinitum. A 40-year career of helping the most disadvantaged and so on. But actually, fighting those fires never gave me an opportunity to really focus on how do we fundamentally, you can all stand on the riverbank and we can watch the bodies floating past. Our job as we get older and wiser is not to stand on the riverbank watching those bodies floating past, asking who's throwing them in, but to go upstream, find out who's throwing them in and to get them to stop. And I think that's where we are as a community as we go forward. But also, final to that, if I may, is just, we live in an international and global world, for God's sake. And sometimes we get trapped in our fishbowl politics, in our little village isms, schisms, and we don't realize that there's a vast black economy, vast African opportunity of unimaginable proportions that make Wakanda look like, idiocy in the real world. And yet we're struggling because we want, to reform stop and search in Peckham. Instead of being part of that global debate with the George Floyd family about how do we tackle police reform from Brazil to Brisbane in Australia to Brixton and to Bradford. How do we join that global conversation? And one thing that I find that lockdown has given the potential for is that we are now more ready to have that international conversation. And it's been well overdue. Garvey had it at a time when he didn't have technology. Now there's no excuse for us. We have the technology. And the other thing I think, thank God we have, is a willingness of the young people to look beyond the borders of their current nations and their particular confines on any given issue. And that's also going to be important. Viv, you want to come in?
Well, you picked up on the point I was going to encourage you to open up on, so that you've covered that, and I'm cool. We probably want to make an announcement to our loyal followers in this space, even though the official announcement isn't out yet, about our role in relation to George Floyd. So I'll allow you to touch that bit on. But what I want to pick up on is just the point that Avril made around opportunities. And so I want to be clear that I don't want people confused about what I was saying. I'm not saying don't pick up the opportunities that are here now. No, we have to be dynamic in our thinking. What I'm saying is don't let some change that somebody's presenting to you go to your head. You've got to do it in a strategic way. Too many of us, again, as Lee's already stated, are run around as individuals. You can be an individual and part of a collective. And if you're part of a collective, then you have to regrow and establish within you the discipline of accountability. You're not the font of all knowledge. So if somebody offers you a contract and it's a sizable contract, but they've got a track record and racism, discrimination, and so on and so forth, if you're part of a collective, you can negotiate much more productively and successfully an outcome that's going to be benefiting not only you financially, but also your wider community. And that's my key point. And then again, the opportunity to be on a board. If you're a lone black person on a board, you're not going to have the same kind of leverage as you would have if you're that individual on the board representing a network of individuals that you're accountable to. And when we put people on boards, or we sit on boards, Lee, myself, and others within this, because all the people on this are Black Sox members, we're more powerful because the people around that table know that we're part of a broader collective. It's just a smart move. And as Lee's already said, it's not news. We have to pick up the information that's already been out there for centuries and refamiliarize ourselves with those strategies and modes of thinking in order to get much more successful outcomes. These big corporations don't operate as individual brands. I don't know, Sodexo or I don't know, one of the other big ones, Capita. When you go behind those seemingly, mono operating brands, you've seen 50 or 100 individual brands behind it, because it's the smart move. They wouldn't be able to operate as global brands if they weren't operating as collectives of organizations and individuals. And that's all we're saying. Let's just be smart about how we approach those opportunities so that there are opportunities for our whole community and not just for ourselves. We can't continue to be selfish because it won't get us the results we're looking for. And they expect us to be selfish and individual in our thinking in order for them to make sure that any incidents like George Floyd and the spark of outrage that it fires up in us is short term.
Yeah. Sorry. Before you, yeah, you're right, because a lot of these things are emotional reactions in terms of they expect us to kind of collab together and do certain things, but in short terms and short bursts. One of the things that is why I asked you the question in the first place, in terms of what can we do as a community, is because sometimes the language that is used isn't as understandable to everybody as it is to maybe those within that sector or within that world. So sometimes I think one of the important things about the platforms that we're promoting right now, and Lee's show, is that explaining to the community what they can do in layman's terms. At the very basics. Okay, this is what you can do to start with. There's money. I'm going to explain to you how to get that money. I'm going to explain how to come together as a group. I'm going to explain to you how to kind of use, the networks around you to kind of move forward, rather than, well, you have to be part of this group, or you have to be part of that group in order to understand the language. Because, there's so many of us that want to do stuff, but we get anxiety. We get, there's a lot of pressure. Like, well, where do we get it? I don't understand these words. I don't understand these terms. I don't understand, what these guys are talking about right now. How do I get in? How do I get this pot of money? How do I bring my through with me? So I think that's one of the things that this platform should be doing in terms of, and is doing, should I say, to kind of break that down to the general public in terms of, okay, this is how you can help us.
Awesome. I think it speaks to our mantra. The Jasper Drive Time is news you can use, not just simply for that, long arse traumatic inspection of all our woes and problems and issues with no backup, no outcome, no plan to take it forward. We're part of an ecosystem of a movement, and this is a platform for that movement, and it benefits from that movement, and so do you in terms of the issues that we raise. And we've spoke about the international, and let me just say something about politics. I can see the debate raging online in relation to lots of things. So you've got some clarity to that debate there, Viv. So thanks. In relation to that, look, I'm a strategic political advisor, and it may surprise you to know that there are very few, and I won't name names because it wouldn't be right to do so, but Viv will bear witness. There are very few black politicians of any political party who've not come and sought some advice and support, senior figures. And the reason why they do that is because they understand that whatever our ideological differences, sometimes those differences are more party political than ideological. And in fact, that when we work together, whether that's above the radar or below the radar, and I'm perfectly happy operating on any of them as a continuum, is that's when we maximize our leverage and our assets. I don't have to agree with you 100% to work with you. I don't. It's just simply, I've been in an isolation of one. And many of us are in that glorious isolation because we can't work with other people. And my strategy and my tactic is that I have got it in my head that I have an ethical duty to leverage every single opportunity, regardless of the political party the individual comes from. And if they want to do that behind closed doors, I'm more than happy to facilitate it, and in the hope that we can move the dial forward. So I think that's an important part of the philosophical approach that Black Sox brings to the current political challenges. But also, we're going to talk about international stuff. That's the George Floyd campaign. And we are delighted to be in contact with Attorney Crump, who's the attorney not just for George Floyd, but for Ahmaud Arbery, and a whole Trayvon Martin's parents, a whole host. In fact, anybody in America that you can think that's George of deaths in custody and violence, you can be in contact. I'm hearing myself coming back. You can bet he's representing themselves, and we've been in contact with their family and him, and they've asked us to work with them to organise a global conversation around policing and criminal justice reform in the name of George Floyd. So we're delighted on our part to be working with people in Africa, people in America, people in the UK and wider Europe, a part of a global conversation about the issues that arise from George Floyd's brutal murder and how we can take those to platforms in the United Nations and a global movement that can form in his name that can tackle some of these issues. And we're delighted to do so. So we're going to be bringing you more information about that over the next coming weeks. But we're also talking about how do we respond to the COVID-19 strategy and all of that existential challenge to the Black communities of the world poses. And so we're talking again to African diasporas in Brazil, in Australia, in Europe, in the UK, in America, in Latin America more widely, talking to them all about how can we all come together in this moment to tackle all of the implications, not just the health implications, the economic implications, the global implications of the COVID-19 virus and all the issues and challenges. And so on the two things, COVID-19 and the implications for the economy, the implications for health, the implications for public health education, the virus, vaccine, affordability, all of those issues, as well as all of the issues of the Black Lives Matter movement, police accountability, police proportionality in violence, reform, citizenship, equity in the space of African diasporas around the world. How do we tackle that? Those are going to be the global conversations we're going to be developing in Series 2 and on a number of very specific international initiatives that you're going to see coming out of Black Sox. So these are exciting times, Viv. We're on mute.
Yeah, I just noticed one of the raging discussions around the point that Avril's made. I mean, let me say this first. I think one of the things we're eager to find out is what topics people think we should cover in the next series. We're desperate for feedback from people around all of that. But just Avril's point about being party political and what's happening with Joe in Haringey, which it is party political, whether it's internal or otherwise. We, as an organization, try to focus on the policies and how those policies impact our communities, and Lee's just articulated that better than I ever could. We do monitor what's happening with the different political groups, because quite frankly, they have a massive impact on our communities. To say that we're up in the mix of it all, nah, not particularly. The Labour Party is going through its own transition, and we'll let it get on with that. We will watch that one from the sidelines and watch the bodies drifting downstream. But same's true of the Liberal Democrats. They're going through their own changes, and I'm sure when they have a full wash up on this whole COVID-19 fiasco, Boris and his colleagues will have to be accountable or be held accountable within the party and by the nation as well. But yes, my real passion is for this idea of us as global Africans first, and then all these other identities coming down afterwards. And I think that's one of the positive things that's come out of the George Floyd situation. And Lee's again touched on the fact that we don't really see George Floyd and the COVID-19 events as separate. We see them as very inextricably linked, one driving the other, and then this kind of virtuous circle going around. It forced us to go global in our thinking. Yes, we were doing it in small parts before, but we're now 100% committed to functioning as a global entity, and then down regions, global regions, down into the country, regions within the country, and then specific postcode localities, and making sure, as Jay said, that the information we're putting out is congruent with how people want it and what their specific issues are, whilst at the same time encouraging them to look up and look out beyond their immediate spheres of influence. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Sorry, Lee, just to go back to Avril, which is a side note, Avril. I know Patricia Lamore's eager to make contact with you around something to do with the education bit. And the education bit is a big bit because it's critical to how our children move forwards and do a better job than we have done in the decades to come. Their political understanding is something we need to instill in them even before they fully understood their own names and what they want to do in terms of a career. And I think, again, COVID-19 has created a really good opportunity for us to push that forwards, affecting the George Floyd element of it as well, affecting the national curriculum, the extent to which it deals with our history before slavery, as well as after slavery, and in a way that's going to be empowering for our young people, and also supports the many Black professionals within that system. There is the survey that's out there at the moment. I think there have been, it's about 800 individuals signed up, professionals and family members signed up thus far. If people want to know more about the survey, again, they can contact Black Sox.
An important survey it is. So if any of the listeners out there see Patricia online and some other, you post a link to the survey, we'll gladly scroll that across the screen, although we might have it in the studio already. I'm not entirely sure. Well, it's 11:15. We're going to move on to the final hour of the show. It's been delightful. I think one of the other highlights of the last 10 programs was the two creative platforms, really. One was to have those creatives on. There were textile creatives, there were artists, there were graphic designers who were talking about the creative space and how, in the light of Black Lives Matter, they were being contacted by corporates who wanted them to be involved in various aspects of either making them look good or helping them think about these issues. What they saw as a challenge for Black creativity going forward. I'd like to hear from both Jay and Gabriel on what they see as the challenges for Black creativity in the corporate space and its ethical responsibilities wider. I think the other thing for me was the promotion and the promoters and the DJs, because obviously DJs, the nighttime economy is a big part of the Black economy. We spend probably more than we should on buying clothes and going to clubs and so on and so forth, and all of that has shut down, and that has economic impacts, but it also has social impacts, and we've seen that, haven't we, with the kind of block parties or silent discos I saw the other day. A whole group of young people on Ealing Common, on Streatham Common, with the headphones on that were Bluetooth wireless in to some music, all dancing around, taking their drinks up there and so on and so forth. So we're seeing all sorts of implications for that space. And I was particularly inspired by listening to some of those DJs and promoters about what they saw as the challenge for the nighttime industry, the rave industry, the music industry, as they going forward. Those were some of the creative discussions. And Set the Trend podcast is a podcast I'd recommend to you. Go and have a look at Ray's podcast down there. It's doing some great stuff in relation to airing some of these issues, and also having a opportunity and a platform for strategic and creative artistic discussion going forward. But when we see African design now emerging in the sort of post-Wakanda Black Panther phase, where African design is now, haute couture, where everybody wants a piece of the African design pie, I wonder what our designers think about those issues. Who wants to volunteer?
I'll go first. It's one of those kind of tricky paths, because as talented individuals, you want to showcase your work, but at the same time, you don't want to be part of a situation just like what you Lee and you was talking about in terms of this pandering, where because now we need to make this a focal point because of the situation that we're in right now still. So we got to show that, we embrace the arts, we embrace the culture, and this thing is popular right now, so let's be part of it. So I like it because I think it's important for creators to get in front of their work to show that this is what we do, but only if that means that not just in the period of time when it's needed, but actually in general, that they can say, okay, this style came from here. This style came from here. I am part of the Set the Trend podcast, and one of the things that we do is we're here to kind of create a legacy for these DJs and these MCs from this very, very, very creative, specific genre of music and style. And one of the things that is definitely right throughout the music industry is that if you do not get in front of your own style and your own talents, somebody will come and rebrand that as their. We've seen it happen to Jungle. We've seen it happen to which they rebrand as drum and bass. We've seen it happen to garage. We've seen it happen to different genres where actually, if you don't embrace your actual, this is what we do and this is how we do it, then it'll be rebranded and popularized in a different way. So for me, it's very important for us as creators, as artists, as DJs, as MCs, as painters, as fashion designers to get in front of our artistry, but in a way that we own that, not just for the period of time that it's popular to be that person, but actually this is where it comes from, this is where it stems from. And when you go to these things, whether you're listening to music or you're looking at art, or you're wearing these designs, that this is where it's from, not just in this period of time, but this is actually where it's from. I hear that the Grammys are taking the word urban out of their music award show to make it I think they're calling it black music. I'm hoping that's what they're going, but obviously there's this thing now of actually kind of showing where this creative stuff comes from. I mean, black culture is so popular, but we do not as the end product, we're not the people who actually make the most money from it. So it's important for us to kind of own that, not just in terms of it being something popular that, oh, you guys are great, but actually own that. So I think, like I said, artists getting in front of their artistry is great, but as long as the plan is for us to take ownership of that in general, full stop, and not just for that time or period to make it look cool for somebody else to kind of rebrand that.
Gabriel, African culture is cool all over the world. I've lived long enough to remember when African culture was a kind of dirty word, and nobody was particularly interested in it. And now it's like the coolest thing on the planet. How do you respond to what you see as the advance or not for African culture?
I think you have a time where certain culture will be very popular. It becomes a trend that everyone follows because it's very cool, like you say. But it's our responsibility. Like, I'm just going to really add to what Jay said. It's our responsibility to sort of take control of that. It seems to happen quite a lot in, I guess, African or Black culture, that people can just look at something and go, "This is really cool. I like it, and I'm going to take it." You know, and I'm going to make money off it. I'm going to get all the royalties. I'm going to patent it. I'm going to do this, and that's ridiculous. That's arrogant. And I feel like this is our responsibility as Black creatives to get savvy with that. Like the dominant society is very business savvy when it comes to things like that. You know, they don't just say, "I'll take it." They go with copyright laws, with patent laws. That's something that we have to get involved with at this point. So you see things like it's not just African culture. You see things like Black cultures, Black genres that will just be taken over just like that. And I feel like we've sort of dropped the ball. A lot of us are really familiar with this. The young people in particular, we're starting to get familiar with taking control of our arts, our creative output. But I feel like that needs to be focused on a lot more, because Black culture, African culture will always be cool. But there'll be a time where it becomes a trend and everyone wants to grab a little piece of it. And we have to stay, we have to be in control of that. It's really all about control, really. I think. So I think we have that responsibility as creatives from either the African diaspora or Black culture. We need to take control of this. That's our responsibility. Oh, people are just going to take it. I mean, it's a good thing. Who wouldn't want to take a good thing for free and make some money out of it?
Who wouldn't want to take a good thing? Well, apparently we wouldn't. So we've got to take our own good stuff. And
yeah.
Easily, I think it's the case of Nina, from we know Nina Greywood. She has this thing where she says, "Stick to what you're good at, and then leave the other stuff for the other people." Now, at the end of the day, most times when you're creative and your thought process goes into creating, it doesn't go into business. It doesn't go into the side of patenting that, or how do I monetize this, or it goes into the thought process of how do I produce this piece, how do I deliver this piece to the world. So I think this is where we as people have to organize ourselves. So there shouldn't be the case where this marvelous piece of work is being put down now, and then somebody from outside of our culture sees the money potential in that and comes in. There should be a part that we all play within the process of any situation going on. Okay, there's this beautiful piece now. Viv knows someone who can monetize that. Okay, Lee knows someone who can market that. Okay, cool. We're going to patent this. We're going to take ownership, and this is our stuff. So it stays within our community. We don't have to, create this beautiful thing and then bring it outside the community for it to be valuable. That we need to see the worth, but know how to actually deal with that worth within our own community as well.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And, partly as a political activist, I have to be creative all the time. But I've had to align with people like Mr. Amun here to get that product into the right space. And whilst I can bring the energy on the politics and the imagination, what he brings is the focus and the discipline and the expertise into getting that product development. And that's partly why Drive Time has moved in the way it is, and we're happy in our collective unison, knowing that what we each bring to the party. And I think it's very interesting when we had that promoters discussion, just how much of that culture we don't yet own, and yet the global nature of African or Black culture is a multi-billion, if not trillion, I wouldn't be surprised, dollar industry that the next sets of young people must have to control. But where I am optimistic is because what I've seen grime artists do here in the United Kingdom, where they've turned their back on big labels, decided to use new technology as a means of getting their artistry out there. And with people like Stormzy and Rick and lots of others I could mention, have actually made sure that they have got their patents and their copyright and their graphic design locked and they're completely independent. And Tom's is probably the best example from that, and I'm hoping that is going to help, lead the way and fill the void. Mr. Moon, business is your area.
Well, I'd like to think business is the whole community's area, and that's the point, isn't it? That we can't compartmentalize these things. One individual, I can't quite see who it was now. It could have been Phase Master or Nicholas, talked about us making the money and the money driving everything else. We know that in politics, our black politicians can't move forwards because they can't raise. So it's Nicholas. We can't raise the sponsorship necessary to run campaigns internally within the parties that they belong to, and yet we expect them to be speaking on our behalf. So, this idea of finance and politics and culture and so on, they're all interlinked, and it's important that we don't make the mistake of using the Eurocentricized approach of compartmentalizing them. Money or finance is the fuel. It's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in the financial services sector, the FCA. I do, encourage and urge everybody to go up onto the Financial Conduct Authority's website and take the time to look at what it's up to. It's a very dry, unattractive, text-dense website deliberately, because they have an obligation to make the information available. But what they do is make it as unattractive as possible. We need to go in there and delve into it to find those nuggets. They're responsible for 50,000 50,000 companies within the financial services sector, including nearly 3,000 banks, including the recent challenger banks that many of our young people are into. But the Financial Conduct Authority, although many may perceive it as a quango of government, is a limited company. It's a private business that makes business out of regulating other financial services companies. So when Theresa May went to Africa and was doing her robot all over the African continent and people were laughing about all of that, she had a whole range of predominantly European companies alongside her doing business with these African countries that she was visiting. And one of those private companies was the Financial Conduct Authority. And what it was doing was entering into very, very lucrative consultancies with these countries to develop their financial services sectors. Because, we have to be clear that Africa is the future in financial terms, not just a flowery term. It's where increasingly the business is being done. So I think when we talk about money, I say let's talk more about finance. Let's talk about where the resources come from to take these ideas, translate them into businesses. And the business is something that's making money. Let's be clear about that. Translate them into businesses, and then businesses that we can scale. So that's businesses that do, hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds worth of business, and they generate opportunities for other individuals in our community and more widely to do business, to make money, to pay their bills, to drive the economies globally. That's where my head is at. And I can't talk about business or finance and not talk about technology. We want our young people to be in the driving seat of this 21st century fourth industrial revolution. We've seen how powerful it is during lockdown. We're online now. And those who are technophobes they've been forced, they've been, slapped into the 21st century because they wouldn't have been able to do business or interact with their family members where they're not. I mean, my mum FaceTimed me. She's 88, and this was a woman that wouldn't even pick up a mobile phone before COVID-19. And I just saw this call coming through. I didn't recognize the number because she got a new smartphone with a new number. And when I pressed it, her face popped up. I was shocked. So, we need to be sure. I'm going to start talking how I talk sometimes. I skip all over the place. But Amazon is making billions and billions of pounds during lockdown. And it's going to be more, that's going to be the trend, isn't it? These platforms chopping the money. If we're not in the forefront of it, none of these platforms will be owned by anyone who looks like us.
Yeah.
So technology and finance are key, aspects, levers, I believe, in the political process that we referred to before in regards to us, getting the equity that we deserve and that is due time that we realize. Now, as I'm talking like this, I'm conscious of what Jay would be thinking, which is, Viv, you need to unpack that and break that down so that local people get what you're talking about. I agree, but I don't think that's my job. I think that's maybe your job. Lee also, is very eloquent at using analogies that get people to, grip it in their own, particular terms very easily. And I remember when we were speaking at an event in the Docklands many years ago now, and he talked about people using their finances to buy 55-inch widescreen TVs and the rims on the car and getting their nails done instead of using that money to educate their children and so on. And it's stuck in my head all these years. I want to do Viv, and what Viv is focused on is those areas that they make complex so that we don't think it's areas that we belong in. I want Lee. I want us to do a program on the European Space Agency. I spent a lot of time talking to the 2,000 or so companies that are based in Oxford on this big, multi-acre site, quietly squirreling away around space exploration and development, and all the advances in the technology translate into commercial businesses later on, like automated cars and all the rest of it. Started with the moon buggy and all the rest of it that was obviously remotely managed.
Absolutely.
So finance, business, tech. And Africa. There's my focus. Thank you, Lee.
I wanted to be a scientist. I always dreamt of walking on the moon.
You are a scientist, Lee. You are a scientist, brother.
I always had them grand ambitions. So like any kid, I was visiting myself, flying to Mars. I used to get chemistry sets to see the acid reactions, and then nail filings in the jar and all that. Absolutely fascinated in science. I'd love to do a program on the European Space Agency. Maybe we'll get Neil deGrasse to come on with us, and we have a proper discussion on black people in the future. Because of course, when we were growing up, you never saw black people in any sci-fi films. So Richard Pryor had a joke, didn't he? He said, "What's the deal with Hollywood and sci-fi? They're not planning to have black people in the future." And lo and behold, 40 years or so later, sci-fi Wakanda only shows black people as owning the future. So it's come a long way, guys. It's coming up to almost the end of the show, but we have to talk about this. Can I do the moonwalk? No, I'm not doing any daddy dancing this morning. People traumatized. But let's talk about, and we have to, because it's on the cusp of everybody's lips. If anybody who knows anything about politics now, let's talk about Trevor Sewell and he's been made chair, hasn't he, by Boris Johnson of the Race Commission. That's going to look.
Lee, you can't talk about Tony Sewell without talking about Trevor Phillips at the same time.
I'm happy for them to be co-joined.
Let's do the double.
Let's do the double. So we've got Trevor Phillips and we've got my guy, Tony Sewell. Now, for those of you who don't know either of them, I'm sure you know still something. But Tony Sewell is an educationalist. He's done some great work, actually, on generating genius, working with young people, getting them into further education. But he's the kind of guy that talks about black mothers being pathologically incapable of looking after their children. He's the guy who talks about institutionalized racism just being an excuse for educational failure. He's the guy that talks about our culture being so dysfunctional that it refuses to value education and then gives the kids in school the pathetic excuse of blaming racism, institutionalized racism, and white teachers. This is the guy that is going to look into our condition in terms of the disproportionate impact upon COVID. And of course, we all know Trevor Phillips. He has a long and inglorious career of not only, trying to have a reductive perspective and discounting the reality of institutionalized racism, but also in just that provocative black person that you get in every generation who's willing to take 30 bags of silver to say the things that white people would like to say about black people, but never have the guts of saying. The two of them, working with Misery Mirza, as I call her, Mirza Munira, the head of public policy at number 10 Downing Street, who's somebody who says that the Windrush scandal was nothing more than an inadvertent mistake by immigration officials who caught a small number of black people in the hostile environment. All of this cabal of black Tories, centre-right politicians are involved in a joint campaign to discredit and undermine the concept of systemic and institutionalized racism. But Tony Sewell has been made the chair of this commission. Now, I think he's got to go. I can't see how a commission with somebody who doesn't believe in the concept of institutional systemic racism can come to an inquiry with any degree of independence, willing to be led by the science about the disproportionate impact of COVID on black health workers and black doctors and members of the black community. Doesn't see that their economic position leaves them vulnerable to those because they're in transport industries or in the health service, where institutionalized systemic discrimination in the job market puts them in the front line and makes them exposed. But what do other people think? Because as you can see, I've been going about this for hours, and I'm tempted. I'm going to put an article out later, probably today actually, which I've written on the whole thing around this. But Viv, what's your take on it, man? What's the government? It's a provocative point.
Yeah. They know what they're doing. They are deliberately, provoking an outcry because it's a distraction. And that administration just likes winding us up. They love it. They derive pleasure from it. It's not like the previous administration that were actually wanting to avoid conflict. It's Boris's style anyway. Well, that's not true. It's not Boris's style personally. It's the style of the people that he has around him. And it's a good strategy at the end of the day, because they will continue. It allows them to continue the whole conversation about institutionalized racism and whether or not it's actually solid, it's too abstract. And they'll continue with that debate on the back of the outcry resulting from this dysfunctional appointment. That's exactly where, and we can't not, we have to address it. And that's what they want. So they're drawing us out so they can continue the debate in an effort to unravel this whole bigger Black Lives Matter agenda. They're smart. I've got to give them so much credit, man. They're the proper A-team Premier League when it comes to, riding that propaganda machine. I know Boris personally, and let me tell you, that man is smart, sharp in that matter of fact, I don't even have to make an effort at it kind of way. And really, being a prime minister is a part-time job for Boris. He's still going about his primary interest, which is leisure and a fun time, for himself. So his team around him are busy driving this agenda. Munira being, around this particular topic, the primary drive. What do you call her, Lee?
Misery Mirza.
Misery Mirza. But she's a very, pleasant young woman. You met her, you like her. But when it comes to the business of politics and her political career, she's very, very, very serious. And she'll do a lot on the back of our own personal misery, because that's probably what Lee's talking about. And this is just the latest in a long line of strategic plays that they're going to roll out. It's these characters that really worry me, because if they didn't exist, Munira and Boris and the rest of them would have no traction. It's back to this black cladding point, Lee.
Yeah.
He wants to be a lord, doesn't he? Or a sir, or whatever the gong is. and he wants any money that comes downstream, maybe out of the 750 million pounds for the not-for-profit sector, or the other chunks of money that they're printing in the back room, or the money tree, the quantitative easing out here, to come to his organizations and his charities. And they do that by doing government bidding. They'll say literally anything that is required of them. Anything.
Well, he's definitely doing that. I think that, I think you credited Boris with too much. It's not even smart to put somebody who's already says institutionalized racism doesn't exist in charge of an inquiry about.
Look, Lee, you know what? Look, this is our football, and I think we're going to disagree on it, and I'm going to be proven right. Let's watch how this one plays.
We're a democracy, right? I don't think it's a smart move to put somebody, because let's face it, my boy Boris could have found somebody who would give the appearance of independence, but would have been pro-Boris, but wouldn't have been so as inflammatory as to put a fox in charge of the hen house. And that's
they want the provocation.
Weird.
They want that.
I know the dead cat strategy. When all things are going wrong, you walk in the room.
Come on.
And you put a dead cat on the table. Everybody's
there you go. Exactly.
I understand all of that, right? But this commission cannot have credibility in any shape or form, and maybe they're not interested in that in any shape or in relation to the issues. Gabriel, what do you think? You put a fox in charge of a hen house and think that's a smart move?
I think this is one of the cases where when the grown-ups are speaking, I'm just gonna. So consider me a student right now in this scenario. So I'll just go back and listen. But yeah, I've done my homework just right now, just checking what's going on. And you talk very much about politics and how, Jay was also talking about how we should keep the message consistent. We should put in a language that a lot of people understand. And then you have guys like this that could really drive our message home for us. And then, they're quite a detriment to it. So it's not a good look for the young people, because we do look up to grown-ups like that to put our message out there. We do look up to keep driving our point home. And then seeing this really just takes us out of the whole, let's believe in politics, let's go out there and vote. But yeah, I'll just leave it there. I'm just going to go back and listen more.
Hey, you don't have to say any more, Gabriel. What you said is quite eloquent. And let's remember that this commission was set up in response to the Black Lives Matter demonstration, right? Yeah. So young people think about it is absolutely key. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, it's ticking boxes, isn't it? And again, it's another distraction movement. So while we're discussing whether these guys should be in the post that they are, there's other stuff happening in behind the scenes that we don't see. So distraction politics again. So, but yeah, totally agree.
Well, Lee. Patricia's just said it should be you chairing it.
Oh, bless. Well, I'm a firm believer in institutionalization. So that's was always going to be my perspective. But we're coming to the end now. It's 10 to 12. And for the final show, and just to say, look, we are looking for ideas for taking the show forward. I know we haven't, I've been a bad host and not really facilitated your comment, but if you've got comments that you want to give us in this last 10 minutes, put them in the chat box. Let's hear what you say. What do you think Lee Jasper's Drive Time should be doing in the future? We're going to have a whole new introduction. The film video VT there that we do when the program opens. We're doing a new one. We'll have new design in terms of the leaflets this time around. We're going to have a whole new focus on that. We're also doing with Section 106 Media, we're going to do a series of documentaries, and Vic could say a little bit more about that before we end today. And one of the most exciting projects I'm thinking about for the latter part of the year is Lee Jasper's Black Question Time, where we really have the same question time format and we bring people around the table. And I think Drive Time's been a good platform for helping me get that idea into shape, where we have people around and we have our own question time on the issues that we're interested in, on the key issues of the day. But what do you think out there? What do you think we should be covering? You've heard about the range of issues from mental health and so on, and these are perennial issues. So we're invariably going to revisit them again and again and again. But we're going to take slightly different angles and perspectives on them. Any ideas, guys? Have you any ideas on any unique programs? We've got the European Space Agency. I'm going to do that one. I'm definitely going to do one about my allotment, which is producing a fine batch of mint that I had in my mint tea this morning, and a couple of courgettes this week with tomatoes growing nicely. So I'm a great grower. So I'm going to take the camera live down to my garden and show the allotment green-fingered side of Lee Jasper. Any contributions, guys? Give me some innovation. Where can I go?
Well, Avril's just said we need to go back to education. I think that's right. We definitely need to go back to education.
Yeah.
Avril's just said we need to go back to education, and I would agree with her on that one. It's a big strategic piece in terms of proactive solutions, and it's such a complex area. I think we need to do one on carers, massive health, but definitely, there are all these invisible individuals, enabling the economy to function because they're looking after unwell family members at home, and they just don't get a look in. So I think a program on carers would be a really powerful one, Lee. Black carers in particular. I only know of one organization out there that's Black-led, working with carers and the people that they care for, and the young children who are adversely impacted as a consequence of being in a home where there is someone who has to be cared for and an adult just doing the caring. And then lastly, kind of tying it back into the education, you've got many, many young people out there who are carers, and that, industrial system that is our national education system doesn't recognize them when they're coming in late or hungry or whatever else. They're just seen as dysfunctional young people, or they've got an attitude problem, and before you know it, they're out on the road, even though they were, they're little heroes, little superheroes in the home looking after adults.
I'm being urged to do one on bees, and as you know, my beehive, or my collective community beehive, somebody tried to teeth the honey, killed 20,000 bees, and I posted about it, and remarkably, I was contacted by an environmental magazine who did a whole story of who murdered Lee's bees, and I was very upset and angry about that. So I might do something on that. Personal solvency, that's a great one. What happens if you do go bankrupt? How do you cope with that? Family and health, very keen on the new research that shows that not only is the mother's health important to the genetic disposition of the child, but also the state of the father's health at the time of conception is critical in his genetic makeup. So if you're hard drinking, hard smoking, and hard living at the time you conceive, that lifestyle feeds through into the genetic makeup of your child. So I think we'll do some more on that and pregnancy. What climate emergency crisis people are saying. And I think that somebody put suing the Metropolitan Police. Well, that's been a lifetime objective of mine. But look, guys, it's 5:02, and we need to be off air by 12. So we're going to say goodbye to our panel. Jay, any final closing words before we go? Jay's frozen, so I'm going to go to Gabrielle.
It's been great being part of this.
Sorry, yeah, you go on, Jay. You froze there for a minute. Go ahead.
I said it's been great being part of this, and obviously would like to continue with this road. So yeah, so looking forward to the next topics. Looking forward to the next season.
Okay, Gabriel.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Jay said. It's been a great eye-opener for me. I think there's some sort of disconnect from what was being delivered, as I was too much part of the process. So I'm intrigued, and I want to be part of this more. I want to be at the forefront. I think there's a surge of passion here that you obviously see from what we produce and what we bring the next season. So look out for that. I hope that I am allowed the opportunity to show my face a little bit more, because I quite like it.
Get the gas.
I said the right things today, so it's more. I'll take this more as an interview to Mr. Lee and Mr. Viv here, and to Mr. J. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what's next, and I'd say definitely expect nothing but the best. This has been nothing but a good process for us to sort of tie up some loose ends, iron some things and whatnot. So it's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good. Look out for us.
Absolutely. Literally 60 seconds, Viv. Final word.
I want to commend you for your consistency, Mr. Lee Jasper. You are an individual with multiple personalities, and I think each one of those personalities is much needed in these difficult times. And leading on Drive Time Home Edition during the lockdown, as it was before, I think was selfless of you, given what was going on with your daughter and all the other support that was required of you within your home, and the stuff that you do within the community. So well done to you. Many people who do this will know that it takes a lot out of you to be in the forefront of something like this every single Saturday for nearly 2-3 months. So I just want to commend you for your leadership in that regard. And I'm looking forward to the next iteration. Thank you.
Well, thank you to my guests here on Lee Jasper Drive Time. Couldn't have done it without you. I'm deeply grateful for your contributions over the last 10 weeks, and we're coming up to the last minute of this show. We are going to be back. Give us, I'm not sure how long the break will be. I think it might be 5 weeks, just so that we can get our house in order, make sure we come back even better. The Drive Time specials will be back, the one-to-one interviews. That was so much the inspiration for the show in the beginning, as well as the documentaries and the Black Question Time. Alison's saying, remind her who gave the idea for Black Question Time. I've had so many people suggest that to me, but you're certainly one of them, Alison. So thank you very much. To our loyal listeners out there who've supported the channel, please just go back and look at the rest of the programs. Any of them you missed, continue to share them, continue to promote them. I'll be delighted to do that. And most of all, to Theo in the MediaNet Live TV studio, who's made this program run like clockwork. My name's Lee Jasper. I've been delighted to be your host over the last 10 weeks. We're going to see you again on the new season of Lee Jasper Drive Time #Home Edition. Enjoy your weekend. Please go on to my Facebook page and share that public health information message about keeping our young people safe this weekend. The police are out in full force. We want to save lives and stop violence. Share the message. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.
Hi, my name's Lee Jasper. This is Brixton, London, and you're watching Lee Jasper Drive Time.